Okay. Well, I hope everybody's had a good week so far. If not, maybe the second half will be better than the first. Remember those that were mentioned in prayer, and one other that many of you know, David Demacic is, I would say, in his last days. He's in hospice care right now, and he's at the hospice facility unless they moved him back home. But keep that family in your prayers as well. This evening we're going to cover as much of chapters 2 and 3 as we can. Maybe we'll get through both of them, but we'll at least start with chapter 2. Just a summary there that I wrote out of chapter 2. Joshua secretly sends 2 spies to view Jericho. Just a reminder, what we've gotten to, the children of Israel had come to the promised land one time, sent 12 spies in. 2 had a good report, 10 had an evil report. Children of Israel had to wander in the wilderness 40 years to all that generation except for Joshua and Caleb died out. So now they're back at the promised land. And remember, last week we looked at where Joshua was assumed the command, if you will, from Moses passing away. The children of Israel had pledged their support to Joshua. And so Joshua sends 2 spies this time. We're not told why he didn't send 12. Maybe 2's the magic number. But he sends 2 spies to view Jericho. We see in this chapter that they lodged with Rahab, a prostitute. The king was told and tried to locate the men. Rahab misled the pursuers and hid the men under a roof, and she makes a deal with the spies and helps them escape. And the symbol of the agreement was a scarlet cord. The spies returned safely and had a favorable report to Joshua. So that's kind of the summary of the chapter, but let's dive in. It's not a long chapter, so if I could get 2 people to read it for us, that would be good. Someone read verses 1 through 12.
Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. And as soon
All right, someone else pick up there to the end.
So the men said to her,
Go ahead, Dave, you're better now.
so men said to her, our life or yours, if you do not fulfill this business of ours, and it shall come about when the Lord gives us the land, that we will deal kindly and faithfully with you. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, and her house was on the city walls, so she was living on the wall. She said to them, go to the hill country, lest the pursuers happen upon you, and hide yourselves there for 3 days until the pursuers return. Then afterwards you may go on your way. And the men said to her, we shall be free from this oath of you which you have made us swear. Let us. When we come into the land, you tie this cord of scarlet thread in the window, through which you let us down, and gather to yourself into the house your father and your mother, and your brothers and all your father's household. And it shall come about that anyone who goes out of the doors of your house into the street, his blood shall be on his own head, and we shall be free. But anyone who is with you in the house, his blood shall be on our head, if our hand is laid on him. But if you tell this business of ours, then we shall be free from the oath which you have made us swear. And she said, according to your words, so be it. She sent them away, and they departed. She tied the scarlet cord in the window. They departed and came to the hill country and remained there for 3 days, until their pursuers returned. Now the pursuers had sought them all along the road, and had not found them. Then the 2 men returned and came down from the hill country, and crossed over and came to Joshua the son of Nun. And they related to him all that had happened. And they said to Joshua, surely the Lord has given all the land into our hands, and all the inhabitants of the land moreover have melted away before us.
All right, so we see some interesting things here about the city and what has happened inside the city and what's happening outside the city. But we know from just our study previously about Jericho that Jericho was a pretty impressive city, that it was walled, pretty strong. But what detail do we pick up in this chapter, in this reading, about the walls? What's that? All right, so Rahab lived inside the wall. So even if it was a small room that she lived in, that's still an impressive wall that somebody could live inside the wall. And so we see then, so hopefully get a better picture of how impressive, how fortified this city is of Jericho. I know there's some archaeologists here, last year, year before, feel like they found the remnants of the city of Jericho. You might Google that sometime, whether that's true or not. I'm not sure. I couldn't say for sure, but from just this passage, we know that the city had some strong walls. I mentioned last week in kind of a little homework assignment to do a little research on Rahab. And I mentioned last week too that this is one of those passages that puzzles me sometimes, and it kind of raises some questions in my mind. And I don't know that I have all the answers, but maybe you do. What were some of the things outside of this passage that you found out about Rahab? Okay, how about let's just go there. Hebrews 11:31. So we know just being in that chapter, she's in the Hall of Fame of Faith. And so someone read verse 31 when you get it.
By faith the heart of Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe when she had received the spies of peace.
So out of all those listed in our Hall of Fame of Faith, she's one of those. What are some other things about Rahab? Andy.
She's in the genealogy of King David and Jesus.
All right. One place to see that is Matthew 1:5. Go ahead and turn there. Andy, you want to go ahead and read that?
Solomon begot Boaz by Rahab. Boaz begot Obed by Ruth. Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David the king.
All right. So from that, what do we know about her then?
So she's in the genealogy, and it's unusual that she's mentioned because typically only men are mentioned in the genealogy, only every now and then. Like we saw Rahab, and we also saw Ruth. I think that might be it. Oh wait, no. Also Tamar as well.
There's another interesting twist with that story as well. But what's that? All right, she wasn't a native-born Israelite, and so that's also interesting. One other passage I wrote down here is in James, James 2:25, in which is another just interesting passage there. But verse 24, you see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. And in the same way, was not also Rahab the prostitute justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? So we have several passages here that talk a little bit about Rahab. But we've read the passage. Let's look at a few lessons here from chapter 2. The first one that I have listed down is always do reconnaissance or recon before major decisions. I think what we see here in verse 1 is that Joshua sent out the two spies. Yes, they had looked at it 40 years prior to that, but he sends out two spies, and this time, Joshua had been there into the land, but he says, go view the land, especially Jericho. So Jericho had its reputation, and he wanted that city especially to be viewed, and he asked for this reconnaissance to be done. We find in verse 23 that the two men returned. They came down from the hills and passed over and came to Joshua the son of Nun, and they told him all that happened to them. And so, a leadership lesson is there for us, is let's not go into major decisions blindly. Let's do our homework, and certainly worth that on any major decision. You can look at almost any decision in life that you would call a major decision. Isn't some reconnaissance? We may not think of it that way. Some of you military minds might think of it that way. But we should do our research before jumping in to major decisions, and make sure that we're making the right decision, that we have the right approach, that we have the right plan on those things, not just go off the seat of our pants on every major decision. The second lesson that I hope we get, to me, this is one of the most powerful lessons from Joshua 2. And if you don't hear anything else that I say tonight, I hope that we remember, when we think of Rahab, we remember that everyone has value. Everyone has value. Sometimes throughout the Bible, we see where God sometimes picked people that wouldn't be the first person that comes to our mind. You know, we think of David. What was said about David? But how was he described physically? Small in stature, ruddy young man. You know, we see John the Baptist probably would not be one that from outward appearance you would think, but there's Zacchaeus. You could go on and on about different men and women that God used throughout the Bible. And I think what he shows, you know, he picked some fishermen to be on his leadership team. He picked a tax collector to be on that team. And so we see that everyone has value. Have you ever heard of imposter syndrome? What does it mean, Mr. Clemens? One day you're going to be found out. And I think it's one of those that we all can have from time to time, that we're not the right person for the job, that we're not the best qualified to do this task or to do this job, that maybe someone else is better suited for that. And, I'm over my head in this job. I think Satan tries to send all those messages to us that, no, I'm not the best one for that. You need to pick somebody else. And, you know, here we see that everyone has value. And the reality is every single one of us was created by God to serve him. We're here for that purpose, to serve him. And all of us has value. And if he could use Rahab and be in the lineage of Jesus, out of all the people in the city, if he could use Rahab and see the value in her, how she was instrumental to this whole mission, then he can use every single one of us. Satan tries to put in our minds that nobody knows about us, nobody recognizes us, that we're nothing, that we have no value to God's kingdom. We have no value to others, that people just wouldn't notice if we weren't here. And somebody else is more important than us. But that's not what this passage teaches us. We all have value. And why do we know? What are some of the ways we know that we have value? What are some basic ways we know we all have value? We're created in God's image. That's one basic way. Jesus died for every single one of us. He died for us. And if we didn't have value, he wouldn't have died for us. What's another basic way? All right. He does. How about that we're all part of the body?
He chose us to fulfill the mission.
Okay. He chose us to fulfill the mission, but you know, some of us may be that pinky toe that gets stubbed every once in a while, or some of us might be that black fingernail that got bruised and beaten a little bit.
How often, though, do we see the example where God accomplishes the most with the least? You know, so if you feel that way about yourself, God shows you that doesn't matter. I can accomplish anything through whatever I choose.
And I think he shows that through this book, through Joshua, very well. It doesn't matter. Just so long as you're on God's side, you know that you were created in God's image. Christ died for you, and he has a plan for you. He wants you to be used in God's kingdom. And so if we don't get anything else out of this, I hope we learn that. The third lesson here is be willing to do the right thing, even if you're the only one. And this is one of those mixed messages, because here's a prostitute lying about where the men are, but she was still willing to do that. Notice verse 3, and we're told that this is why she's in the Hall of Fame of faith. But then the king of Jericho said to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search all the land." And so here we have the king of this powerful city, and he's come demanding those men. But she hid them, and she protected them. And, as far as she knows, and as far as we know, she's the only one. She was acting on her own there. And so sometimes we may be the only one in a group that may be faced with a decision, but we need to be willing to do the right thing. A couple other lessons. We should believe in God's power. Notice verse 9. Verse 8, backing up one. Before the men lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you." She had confidence in God. I don't know that she knew much about God, but she said, "I know that the Lord has given you the land." That's to me amazing, because they haven't really started invading yet. They've been camped out for 40 years out there, but I guess it's this group that's heard, okay, they're on the move. It's time, and these people were afraid. Don't you think that maybe Jericho built those walls because of Israel? I don't know. We're not told that specifically. But if they've been camping out there for 40 years, and okay, here's the children of Israel, and God brought them out of Egypt. They want this land. They've sent people to spy out this land, and they're out there camping out. Maybe that's why they had so fortified walls. I don't know. We're not told that specifically. But this lady knew and believed in God's power. And if she believed in God's power, the question is, do we believe in God's power? If he had the power to do this, doesn't he have the power to handle our situations, our problems? Andy?
I think it's an interesting thing, and this is the point that James gets at when he mentions Rahab, is that she believed in God's power, but it also motivated her to action. If you look at her description, it sounds like everybody in Jericho believes that they're going to come destroy the place. So why aren't they doing anything like she is?
She was the only one that acted on her faith. And, I would say we all believe, otherwise we wouldn't be here tonight. Do we act on our belief? How much do we believe? Do we have belief not only that God did these things, but that he has the power to handle our issues, our problems? The same sentiment is found in verse 10. Notice verse 10. "For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, who you devoted to destruction." So she said, "For we have heard." Well, there's other passage that, how shall we hear? Okay. And so the question to us is, whom have we told? Do we believe in God's power? If so, who have we told? Rahab heard. She was not Israelite, but she had heard. She had heard the stories about God. The question is do our neighbors know? Do the people we interact with know that we believe in the power of God? And have we told that? Also, verse 11, if you notice it, as soon as we heard it, Rahab saying, as soon as we heard these things, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you, for the Lord your God, he is God, in the heavens above and the earth beneath. And, the lesson there is that there is no God like ours. I don't know what they worshiped and who they worshiped, but she said, for the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. Wouldn't it be something if everyone in today's world believed that or knew that, heard that?
And I might make a small modification there. It's small, but it's also significant. Change the word like to but. There is no God but ours.
True.
And I know but they were in a time period where the multiplicity of gods was plural, and the Jews were unique.
But she knew that their God was not like theirs. He's the one in the heavens. That's right. That,
Just heard them, David. I mean, the whole land knew what they did.
right.
So you can hear and you can know and you can believe, but if you don't do anything about it, then you're headed in the same place these schools.
Exactly.
David heard it said one time, a lot of people believe that God will do something, but until you believe that a lot of people believe that God can do something, but until you believe that he will do it, it's not going to motivate you or push you to do anything that you know you should.
I'm also convinced along those lines, Jeremy, is we don't recognize as much what he has done for us, what he has done in our lives. And it's worth our time to pause and reflect and realize what he's done in our life and thank him for what he's done with that. Tell our kids what he's done. Tell others what he's done in our lives. All right, a couple other lessons here. With God, we can be confident in victory. Look at verse 14. And the men, these two spies, said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you. Notice third language. Then when the Lord gives us the land. Joshua sent the right spies. They knew that going in. You wonder what they thought. Man, this is an impressive wall, but God's going to give this to us. He's got this one taken care of.
What's the scripture, David? How are we supposed to pray? Not as if it would happen, but boldly.
They had that faith. The question is, do we have that kind of faith? Do we have a wall like Jericho in our life? Is there any problem that's in our life that God cannot handle? Do we walk around with that same confidence? With God, we can be confident in victory. We've been told that we're going to be victorious. We even have more information to go on than these people did. We have a lot more to be confident that we can be victorious. Satan wants to tell us we're a failure. He wants to magnify those failures. anything that doesn't go our way, he wants us to dwell on that failure and call ourselves a failure. But with God, we are victorious. Just by being on his side, we know we're victorious. The next lesson is who is in your house. And this is not one of these things that's stated, but notice verse 18. Behold, when we come into the land, you shall tie the scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and you shall gather into your house your father and your mother and your brothers and all your father's household. Then if anyone goes out of the doors of your house into the street, his blood shall be on his own head, and we shall be guiltless. But if a hand is laid on anyone who is with you in the house, his blood shall be on our head. So he pretty much opens the door. Okay, whoever's in your house is going to be safe. Whoever's in your house when we come back, whoever's in the house where that scarlet cord is going to be okay. The question is, who's in your house? Who have you gathered to make sure they're okay? They're safe. She was given this wide open opportunity. Whoever she gathered in her house would be okay. We've been given that same opportunity. Who's in our house? Who are we going to make sure is okay when Jesus comes back?
The scarlet cord really represented blood of atonement. Really says it all.
We see that theme all woven through this. We have this ability to see that now. But isn't that neat that this same lady is in the lineage of Jesus, and that even that theme of that scarlet cord is right here in this passage. All right. In the last lesson I have down, and I'm sure there's more here in chapter 2, and we mentioned this last week in another passage, but we can say it again here in verse 24. See the glass half full. So when the spies came back and they told Joshua, they said to Joshua, truly the Lord has given us all the land into our hands, and also all the inhabitants of the land melt away because of us. So they had heard that from Rahab, that they're all scared of us. And the bottom line is, if we've scouted out Jericho and we think we can take Jericho, then the rest of the land's going to be okay. And so they were confident there. And the question is, do we look at life that way? I think too many times we can be pessimistic and look at life half empty instead of having the confidence that these spies had here. Any other thoughts on chapter 2?
I never had thought about the rooms in the wall, but if you think about how they conquered Jericho and Rahab being saved, man, it really drives home the point that God's power, he can pinpoint where he wants it, because if the walls come tumbling down, which they did, and her room was in the walls, how was she saved?
Good question.
That's obvious. God. Is that where she's supposed to be? It had to be him.
Yep. All right.
I think Rahab and the Gibeonites follow, I guess it's chapter 9. I think those are also very useful in answering the question of, like,
and the questions, how can a loving God, do those things? And this helps us see into God's mind a little bit, like you mentioned. We're not going to have time to dive, well, not going to have much time at all to dive into chapter 3. But let me just cover verse 1 there, and then we'll dive into the rest. To me, crossing the Jordan is one of those, we talk about the Red Sea a lot, but crossing the Jordan is equally as impressive, and there's a lot of parallels here to crossing the Jordan, and as there was in crossing the Red Sea. And maybe if you have some homework, just compare the two. Think through the crossing of the Red Sea, what's similar to crossing the Jordan here in chapter 3, but then also what's different between the two. But notice verse 1, then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Shittim, and they came to the Jordan, he and all the people of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. So a couple things you'll see in Joshua. If you really want to study leadership, look at Joshua himself. And what did he do? What were his characteristics? What were his habits? What were his daily habits? What did he do with people, with his people? What's one thing you see here in verse 1? Patience. He was patient. What else? He got started quickly. He rose up early in the morning as well. We see several of these things from Joshua, and you'll see it in some other passages. He was always among his people, and that patience there. You see, he was lodging with his people many times. There, he was always among them. Here, he rose early in the morning was one of those things. I always wondered, okay, I get up with an alarm clock. These days, I don't usually need an alarm clock. I wish I could wake up with the alarm. Most of the time, I wake up before the alarm. But they didn't have an alarm clock. So how did he arise early in the morning? That's just one of those questions. But the Bible says he arose early in the morning. I don't know how he did that. He set his dog, set his, I don't know, set his watch, set his sundial, set his rooster. I don't know what he did, but he arose early in the morning and went out. And to me, what's impressive about this is, okay, they've been waiting 40 years, and now Joshua's in charge. He sent the spies out. They came back, and what happened? Next morning, he got up, and they're ready to go. They're ready to go into that. And to me, that's just a neat lesson. Sometimes we sit around and we wait and we plan too much. But when he got that report, they were ready to get up and go the next morning. I hope from this study tonight, the things that the number one thing I hope you gather from tonight is that you have value. God needs you. He needs you in this kingdom. He needs you part of his family. He sent his son to die for you. You have a purpose. You're needed here at Lehman. You're needed. And you're needed in Bowling Green. You're needed in this community. You're needed in your neighborhood. You're needed to be useful in God's kingdom. And so I hope, if nothing else, that you head out the rest of this week and realize that. And I guess if there's another lesson that would stand out is we're victorious. We have won the battle. We have some things to do on our part, but we know we're going to be victorious. So let's walk around like it, and let's tell others about it the rest of the week. Have a good rest of the week.